Yo, so I've been paying attention to men and women in their early 30s, specifically when they talk about work and specifically that 9 to 5, corporate America, what is a job, the American dream, specifically in that context of work in relation to the American dream and work in relation to their identity. And I've seen a lot of uniqueness in them that may be specific to them only, and I want you to let me know what you think. So, and when I say early 30s, I'll say anyone under 35. So that 30 to 34 range is typically the age of the person that I've been hearing some of these similarities from. And I keep noticing the difference in how they relate to structure. That's really, really interesting to me is how they relate to structure. So, um, structure feels optional. Yeah. Like they're not in the 9 to 5 at that age the way I was in the 9 to 5. Like I was super loyal. How do I get on the growth track? How do I get visibility to leadership? How do I get a ride day with a leader? How do I get a coffee chat with the leader? They they don't care. They don't care about it in the sense of it meaning what it meant to me. Like they're not against these things, but they're not forcing it, they're not focused on it. Where for me, it was the thing to do so that you could be top of mind, have you be found in a good light when promotions came up, et cetera, et cetera. They are more so flowing in a sense of it would be nice, or if it happens, great, or hey, no pressure, or if it doesn't happen, they do not care. They are not in the 9 to 5 the way I was in the 9 to 5. And the structure, the way to get promoted, all of that stuff feels optional if they even care about it. And that's why I say it feels optional because to me, they don't care. And I think the reason why they don't care, so that leads me to my next point. So I think structure feels optional. And the reason why is because for them, work isn't an option. I mean, work isn't the problem, right? So structure feels optional, one, because two, it seems like to them, work isn't the problem. And let me explain what I mean by that. So I have a brother who is 32, and I'm in my 40s. I'm almost 42. Is he 32 then? 7, 6, 5, 8, 8. So yeah, he's 33. He's 33. 33, about to turn 34. Yeah, something like that. Okay. So I remember one time where my brother, this is years ago, was quitting his job. My mom was worried. She called me, told me to talk to my brother, tell him to not to quit his job. When I talked to him, he said I could just drive Uber and this and that. He named a couple other things. And it made me realize, oh, those options were not around when I was his age. And so when I say work isn't the problem, I think they have more dignity in work because also I go back to being his age where I met this guy who had this really big security company. And this is nothing against um, my mom, right? But I was talking to my mom and I was excited because I met this business owner and I didn't communicate it right. So this is also partly my fault, right? But I was like, Mom, yeah, I met this guy. I'm thinking about like going into security work, like security guards. Now, man, granted, he owned a security company. I said security guard because he was a security guard, but he owned the company, right? And she cut me off like halfway through my sentence. I couldn't even finish it. She said, "Hold on, my son would never. You, I spend all that time for you to go to school. You're not going to just be some security guard." Um, and what she was trying to say is there was nothing against the idea of security guards, but she signed off on my loans. She let me stay in the dorms when my grades were crappy. She invested in me and believe me when I told her the BS of I was going to be this business person and I was going to go to school for finance and banking. So when I come around security guard, it wasn't necessarily the idea of security guard as she looks down on it, but but there also is some layers of, security guard is blue collar and there is some layers of growing up in Georgia. Like we were trying to come out of in that time, early 2000s, like people were really, at least in my group, we really trying to come out of blue collar work and get into this. Everybody wanted to go into an office, and my parents wanted that for me. And so I didn't communicate it right, but also there's layers of like what works looks like for me from my mom's perspective. But yeah, so you couldn't even think about doing something that your parents didn't necessarily agree with. And you could, don't get me wrong, but my parents spent a lot of money for me to go to college, and it was partly my fault. But I was the firstborn, so that's neither here nor there. But what I'm trying to say is these kids have more dignity in more types of work. And I'm not saying that people in my generation don't have dignity in these types of work, because we do. We just didn't know any better growing up, though. Like the American dream looked very work in the office, cubicle, long hours, house, etc. These kids will drive their car and pick up random people. And I'm not saying people older than them don't and people younger than them don't. But what I'm saying is they are more understanding in the fact that this is an option. And I think people my age do it if we have to do what we have to do. If you get what I'm saying. Like I'll drive Uber if I have to do what I got to do. I got kids, I got bills. If I got to do what I got to do, I'll drive Uber. But they look at it as a source of income, if that makes sense. I think that sorry I took so long, but that's what I was trying to say. So they have more dignity in more types of work, and they have less of a hang up in the types of work they do. And so I think that's why what I was saying in the beginning, structure feels optional, because work is not a problem, because they don't have the mental hangups or the societal hangups that people in my generation had about all types of work, right? Like we see it now where everybody's saying, oh, AI is going to take over, but then they're also encouraging people to get into some of these blue collar jobs, HVAC, plumbing, etc. But dude, I could have just did that and stopped and saved a bunch of time and money, because I have friends who did that. Again, I was raised in Georgia. I was raised in Atlanta, but once you get 30 minutes outside of Atlanta, if your friends are in the suburbs at that time, it's Georgia. So it's not just Atlanta. Atlanta was like a little bit, Georgia's a lot. And so yeah, I got friends who grew up in a trailer park, and they went to school for plumbing, went to school for HVAC, went to school and work for the city now, the water department, et cetera, et cetera. And they're making a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to, and I'm saying a lot of money because it's more than I make. So, and I don't want to put numbers on it because some people say that's not a lot of money. But typically when people say that, the person that I said making a lot of money is still making more than them. So I never understand why we say that. But anyway, work isn't the problem because they look at work differently. And then the American dream, especially when you talk to these kids at these offices, and when you talk to these kids when you're circling the idea of a 9 to 5, they're not embracing buying a house and having a mortgage. They like to be flexible. They'll take a job at a corporate company because it's in a state that they want to move to. They'll take an opportunity at a job because it's in a city they want to live in, or they want to try something different. They don't wait for a certain age to have a second or third act. They don't wait for retirement to say, you know what, I want to be a ski instructor, so I'm going to go take the job in a colder climate. That way on the weekends, I can learn to ski or teach skiing, right? So there's so many different options of how they approach the American dream. I think the American dream for them is to be an American that gets to execute their dreams, as many dreams as they have. They don't necessarily have to get a house. The house is not the dream. It's every dream I have in my head as an American. That's their idea of chasing the American dream, actually getting to do that and be adventurous. So they never look at work as the anchor. They look at work as just a part of their life, as a tool. And I like the way they look at that. So overall, I don't hear laziness, even though, some people my age, sometimes we say that. I don't necessarily hear laziness, and I don't hear rebellion. I just hear flexibility. And this is specifically early 30s, 30 to 34. I hear flexibility. I hear a generation that grew up watching their big brother or their uncles or their older cousins or whoever, and also their parents just be stuck overall. And if not their parents, they saw other people's parents be stuck. And so they don't want to do that, which is powerful. And so shout out to these early 30s who are trying things, who are getting on YouTube, They have 4 subscribers and they don't care. They're getting on TikTok. They're trying different platforms. They're streaming on Twitch. Man, do you know how none of that stuff is easy? And then also they're doing Airbnb. And I'm not saying my generation isn't doing these things. I'm just saying that group specifically, the language around those things are way more approachable and less strategy for people my age. Like it's just a part of what they get to do because of how they see the world. It's not something that they have to really think about. They just step into things. And I like that. So overall, I'm not saying their approach is better. I'm not saying that older people are bitter. I'm just saying I noticed that their approach is different and I like it. I like that people are able to think like that because you don't want to wait till you get to my age and then decide to say, you know what? Some of this stuff was, I need to unlearn some of these things, or I need to reprogram some of the narratives that maybe I taught myself or somebody else taught me because opportunity is vast. Maybe not the opportunity you want, but there may be some things you actually can get based on what you desire. It just may come in a different way because nobody benefits more from the truth that you believe than the company you work for, right? So overall, I like that they have their own mind and that they're looking at work as a part of life and not a way of life. Peace.